So you're awake. Are you out of bed yet? Hey there everybody, Nico Scarlet Moon back with a video that I kind of feel is just going to be a bit of a free fall for me. I've actually been contemplating a number of different topics and subjects that I want to cover, and I'll probably record a lot of them today, so you'll probably see a lot of the same blue shirt here. So thank you everybody for not commenting on how I tend to binge my way through these things. But in this video I wanted to kind of bring it down to the emotional level, because we're at a very interesting point when it comes to our collective experience, when it comes to this shift in consciousness. We've been doing a lot of talks on work on the self when it comes to manifestation, creation, energy, and of course if you've been keeping up on some of my other videos, yes, I do talk a lot about, kind of making changes on an energetic and spiritual level when it comes to the spiritual climate and spiritual ecosystem. But as we go through these shifts and these turns, we have to kind of also be able to look and see what is going on with our own internal processes and be aware of what is going on when it comes to not only collective processes, but what is still being carried, what is still being played out, and where, again, being awake simply just won't cut it. We have to also get out of bed. And when I say get out of bed, I'm talking about doing the work, right? To me, a person who is awake but they are not out of bed is basically aware of what's going on in the collective. They're aware of the shift in consciousness that's happening. They might be aware of maybe some geopolitical things going on. They may be pretty hip to, some underlying history regarding, the matter of conspiracies and shadow governments and, all kinds of interesting sort of internal cultural warfares going on. But to the person who's not out of bed yet, they might be actually trapped in those spheres as well. You see, it's important to understand that at the end of the day, everyone is sort of on this journey at their own pace and at their own speed. But when we talk about things like spiritual practice, or conspiracy theories, or awakening journeys, or ascension even, a lot of these narratives have also been, to not be able to think of a different word at this point in time, have been co-opted. It's good to see a lot of these conversations becoming mainstream. Absolutely. However, it is not necessarily the best thing in the world for people to get stuck in these loops, right? When we talk about trajectory, when we talk about pacing, when we talk about evolution, when we talk about shifts and changes, these things can happen a lot faster than a lot of you are experiencing right now. These things can happen a lot faster than what we are being, kind of bombarded with when it comes to, dare I say, more prolific messages going on out in the world. And a lot of this has to kind of do with what exactly people are doing with these messages nowadays and with this spiritual intelligence. A lot of stuff that's in circulation and that's really, really popular right now is tied in with the intention of, for lack of a better phrase, let's just say some less than scrupulous people who want to kind of keep old paradigm going as long as they possibly can. So instead of working on an awakening experience to evolve and grow out of it, they're kind of asking for, it's kind of inviting an opportunity to polish a turd, okay, for lack of a better phrasing. We don't necessarily pay enough attention to what happens with these messages and what they're being given. If we're getting all of this spiritual insight and having these powerful awakening experiences to, veils dropping, actual spiritual contact, direct experience, ultimate unlimited creator potential, why are people not actually using their imaginations to go beyond trying to use these abilities, these skills, and these experiences to simply, again, give themselves a different quality of life in that artificial reality experience? When we talk about things like maybe geopolitics, We talk about conspiracy theories. We talk about, lodges and religious cults. We talk about, shadow governments and all of these kinds of things. Yeah, those have all been a very real thing, but they are a dying species. And what's happening now, if you haven't noticed, is that everything is coming undone, and yet there are people who are awake and yet not out of bed, trying to actually just replace one, I guess you could say, system of lordship with another. Now, in a lot of cases, they're also seeing that the people that they're trying to replace the old overlords with are also betraying them left and right. That's kind of what 2019 has been all about. It's kind of like, stop trying to recreate the same thing. Don't think it's going to be better this time around. That's a lesson, I think, for the collective that's almost like learning a romantic lesson. It's like learning a relationship karma lesson. Stop going for that certain type of person thinking it's going to be different this time. Stop trying to recreate this opportunity for healing, closure, or emotional catharsis by simply waging the same battle over and over and over again until you think you've won. And because a lot of these narratives, these awakening narratives, these geopolitical awakening narratives have been sort of hijacked, right? It's now being used as a form of self-preservation. Let me tell you right now, when a person is awake and out of bed, or when a person is in consistent contact with, again, what is really going on a higher dimension of consciousness, 5D and above, they're not dealing in absolutes. They're not dealing in, focusing on maybe co-opting healing journeys and awakening journeys to further old paradigm agendas, to deal with, this shadow government over here, or this politician, we thought he was going to change things and he betrayed us, or this politician, we brought him in because the other person was screwing it up, but now, we're going to have to get rid of them within 2 months. There's a reason all of this is kind of going on, right? Because as we accelerate the shift, so now come the accelerated consequences for repeating cycles over and over and over again. This is not like trying to, get the best gear and the highest levels to beat the boss in a video game. The only way to beat this game is to unplug the console. And a lot of people right now, I think, are having a really tough time with that because we've been kind of conditioned, in a sense, to think that the only way to move forward is to get a very specific type of emotional catharsis or a sense of emotional completion through finishing a story. Look, if the book sucks, put it down. If the movie is shit, turn it off. And what's happening right now is a lot of people, I think, are still like, no, let's fix this, let's work on that. No, you guys, stop. Stop trying to, to fix it. Don't worry about it. If the house is burning down, don't paint the parlor and the kitchen. Stop trying to put up new wallpaper in a burning building. It's not going to work. It's really why we have the world in such crummy shape. I also think that to take it back, though, to the individual level, look where you're also being trapped, by your triggers. Look at where you are doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you are in a space where you are not learning how to create your own reality, and again, you are not out of bed yet, though however awake you are, you might be getting sucked into what a lot of traps that have been laid are just sitting around. God, that was worded. You might be getting sucked into a lot of traps a lot of people are right now. Okay? Under the guise of looking spiritual, a lot of people have climbed to a place of very strong financial and social prominence in the last couple of years. They're not really throwing out anything all that new or cutting edge. We don't need another chakra video on the 1 million there already are. It's not necessary. It's not like you really should be hanging out, maybe looking at horoscope videos where somebody's offering to handhold you through a situation or a parasocial relationship that they have no way to be connected in. I think that there are a lot of interesting sorts of results coming in right now for a lot of people that are kind of noticing that these periods of stuckness, these places of stuckness, again, are all playing to your unresolved issues and playing to your triggers. If you have any of that stuff going on, playing out, that's coming up to be cleared, not to be entertained or indulged. And the longer you give yourself time to sort of play around with it, you gotta ask yourself, is this worth my spiritual growth? Is this worth my spiritual evolution? Trying to get closure through the indulgence of old, dysfunctional, possibly festering wounds. We all have it. All of these things that need to kind of come up to be cleared need to simply be cleared. And if you're letting yourself get trapped by these triggers and letting yourself get tricked into thinking, look, I can't work on myself right now. I'm too spun out. I'm too much in a difficult space. I'm watching a cycle repeat. This has triggered me. Watch out for the next trap, which is the idea that as long as you're a part of a certain group or a certain community, you're okay. Not true. At the end of the day, being in a spiritual group, following a spiritual person, watching spiritual content, listening to spiritual content, it's not the same as doing the work. And because we are in a space where a lot of people are being taken advantage of, they're not being held accountable. God, I hope I do a good job of holding people accountable for their own responsibility instead of waiting for Godot. I mean, to be perfectly honest, a lot of these shifts and a lot of the freakouts and a lot of the craziness that's going on right now is actually the result of almost more like a worldwide healing crisis. And I've talked about this kind of thing before. You want to talk about beings coming and saving the day or helping to wake up humanity, that's been going on for some time. It's just that the people who are out of bed are really not interested in coming back and blessing the shit. That's really, because that's not what it's for. That's actually gonna not only slow down their ascension process, their evolution process, but it's actually only going to make things harder when the whole effort is to clear. And I think the big issue is a lot of people don't really have an imagination anymore. A lot of people's imaginations have been kind of beat out of them, or sucked out of them, or spent out of them. How many people out there really can manifest from their pure imagination all by themselves? Who out there can create a situation that they have an intimate understanding of that is not actually the result of conditioning? We talk about things like aspirational abundance. Beings that are operating from a place of that 5D and above are not necessarily interested in the dramas that play out in the lower realities. It's not really a big deal, right? There's not a huge focus on what is going on with the focus on money or twin flames and lottery tickets or, trying to become some kind of celebrity or feeling legitimized when you've had a life of being passed over. And there's this idea that once you get free, you're also free from the desire to participate in these hierarchical structures. You're free from trying to, again, feel legitimized by becoming a celebrity or becoming, very popular or becoming this object of base sexual desires. Look and see what is playing to your conditioning. Look and see what is still running around, playing to your conditioning and holding you down. For those of you that are awake and are out of bed, those of you that have actually gone the distance and you are in regular contact with your higher levels, your higher self, all of that kind of stuff, you ever notice how your life just kind of stops whenever you decide that it's really important to go and try to play the old game? Have you ever noticed that every time you get bogged down in pursuits of greed or envy or hate or bigotry or agendas, this is where your life kind of stops? And you might think it's coming up to explore. It's not coming up to be explored. It's coming up to be cleared. Why haven't things changed ever since you joined that regime? ever since you decided to apply all of this awakening experience to lower level priorities, why isn't it going forward? Don't try to raise the vibration of a dysfunctional relationship. Don't try to raise the vibration of a violent group. Do not try to bless the shit. It's not going to work. Funny enough, a lot of the new light that's coming in, a lot of this new higher vibrational energy is exactly what certain groups of awakened beings, whether they be grid workers, gatekeepers, path watchers, are actually bombarding the planet with right now, eradicating those kinds of things, creating an environment or an ecosystem where it's completely inhospitable to those kinds of lower agendas and lower focuses and lower experiences, to the point where, again, it can't even exist. When we talk about evolution of vibration going all the way up through all the levels back to source, lower vibrational energies, lower entities, lower anything, are often just simply deleted by the presence of that light. They can't actually substantiate, they can't actually take form. So playing around in the mud fight, in the tar fight, there are terrible things going on in the world right now. We have to find, again, better ways to deal with them, as opposed to, again, getting into the issue ourselves, letting it trigger our baser emotions, spinning out, cursing and hexing our very existences because we're carrying that in our field and imparting it onto everything that we do. When I think about that, I think about how the hatred, the agenda of hatred, has sort of been nobilized by the most desperate people, especially in these last few years. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, a subconscious or maybe even intuitive understanding that a lot of this is going to just simply go away. And a lot of this, as the collective wakes up, it's gone. Again, there's no going back. There's really no way to kind of bring back old paradigm in a good way. It's not going to happen. So forget it now. We're not going to be able to turn back time. That's not what it's for. We've already come too far. Right now is sort of the final clearing, the final demolition. But I think the same can be said for people who are maybe treating a lot of these very rigid systems. Sometimes they're not always a social or political agenda. Sometimes it is more of a very strong religious adherence. I think a lot of people come to these things because they don't trust themselves. They want the external structure to do the work for them, and it can't. But the good news is you would do it better anyway, because you're bigger than the structure. You're bigger than the religious structure. You're bigger than the codes. You're bigger than the teachings. You're bigger than the shift itself. So if you don't trust yourself to make your own decisions, or you don't trust yourself because, again, a lot of people jump into these, and it's kind of like their medicine, right? It's healing them. It's helping them get away from something. They don't trust themselves because they were part of maybe a traumatic experience in adulthood. Maybe they made a lot of difficult decisions or made a lot of, not so great decisions. And so they kind of treat these touchstones and these circles as their protection to keep them on their way. You don't really need that anymore. That's not freedom. You're not free if you're still tied to an anchor. And you have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself to be able to create, to let go. You have to trust yourself to understand and talk to your divine guidance, to talk to your infinite creator source consciousness, your higher levels, your higher self, your connection to God, whatever you want to call it. You have to trust yourself now. Of course, there will always be people out there who are putting out messages, teaching and talking, but you have to make sure that you are not being sucked in to anything that is actually trying to still push an order in a dying world, because you are going to ultimately end up suffering the consequences. That stuff is no longer supported right now. It is coming down. And guess what? All of that destruction, All of the reasons that, again, maybe that particular style of spiritual practice or martial arts isn't working anymore, or maybe the reason that this particular, religious teaching isn't bringing in the spirit anymore, it's because it's not supported anymore. The light has moved in and it's cleared it. Reconnect. Find your own way. You are organic in spirit. You have to find your organic connection. You have to do it. You have to do it. Look at what's going on out there in the world right now. So many people are putting stock in movements because they believe in these political messiahs. They believe in these crazy ideas of turning the world back into some paradise. That matrix is gone. Say a prayer, flush it down the toilet, and move on. There's no way to get it back because it's only more and more getting eroded by what's going on right now. And it doesn't matter, it's not about what side you're on, it's not about, who you like, do you like him or do you like him? Your growth is what's really going to change things here. The collective's growth is really going to change things here. I definitely think that, if you're going to participate in those processes, look to see what actually is most supportive of unity consciousness and the higher vibrational transformation of our relationships with each other here and on Earth. I definitely don't think that, playing into these old stories or trying to get emotional catharsis for unresolved anger or pain through your interactions with the collective is going to get you very far. This is a very interesting point that we're at right now. Because the higher vibe people, the light doesn't hurt them. The lower vibe people, the light actually hurts them. And it's not necessarily hurting as a punishment or a judgment, but what it's doing is it's actually facilitating that awakening crisis, that activation crisis, that healing crisis. A lot of people don't finish their crisis. They don't. A lot of people hit a point, an interesting stride in their spiritual progress, though, I've noticed. They hit this point in about, I'm going to say, mid to high 4D, where at first they feel like they find this bliss and this inner peace, and they think they've figured it all out. Be careful with that, okay? Be careful with chasing bliss, because eventually your life becomes about maintaining bliss. You can't create anything at that point. I don't know why I felt to bring that out. I guess that there's an important message that has to come through here, because otherwise people are going to continue to react to the things they see instead of work on cultivating their knowledge, awareness, and the utilization of their bigger self, the part of them that is bigger than all of this. You are bigger than all of this. And it's up to you to trust yourself. Trust yourself. It's not about, again, righteousness at this point in time. One awake and out-of-bed person is more influential and more powerful than 1,000 awake people who are just sitting in bed waiting on the next post. Waiting on the next bit of whatever to come through. Fear porn, or goodness knows what. One awake and out-of-bed person is infinitely more powerful than somebody who is still trapped. And they're infinitely more powerful than somebody who's asleep. Give yourself that chance. But stop looking for easy ways through. I'm going to challenge all of you right now. What are you trying to sneak into your spiritual evolution? What bit of conditioning? What old focus, old obsession, old preoccupation? We all have things that we're trying to grow, evolve, and become empowered without addressing. We all have those things where we think the cure is worse than the disease. I challenge you to actually face that right now, instead of try and smuggle it in to New Paradigm. So that's what I've got for you guys. I hope that it helps you out. I know this was a bit of a free fall, and it's not exactly a non-challenging message, but I think there's also some very strong encouraging messages in there as well, especially when it comes to lightening up your load. If you're willing to drop a lot of the stuff you think you still have to do, because you really, really, really don't. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I'll be coming back with more videos very, very shortly. I'm probably going to do at least another one today, so that'll probably come out by the time we get to the weekend. And if you ever want to get a session with me, just go onto my website. It's integrativemysticism.com.